I kicked my wife out after she joined a cult, but when I found our dog's collar on a stake, I realized she wasn't just trying to convert me, she wanted to prove loyalty and blood. 6 months after I kicked my wife out for joining a vegan cult, she sent me a stake. Beside it was Max's collar, and he was nowhere to be found. I thought I was losing my mind. Before everything went to hell, Hailey was the kind of woman who'd giggle while blindfolded, trying to guess if the steak I grilled was ribeye or sirloin. She used to be my partner in our weird little foodie rituals, like late-night burger runs and watching Top Chef with a glass of wine. We met at a steakhouse, if you can believe it. Fancy one, too, the kind with sample platters and wine pairings. We fell in love between bites of rare cuts and jokes about how we'd open our own steak lounge one day. But 2 years into our marriage, she changed. It started small. She said she was feeling bloated, didn't want to eat red meat for a while. I didn't mind. I figured it was a phase. Then she met Ava. I should have seen the warning signs when Hailey told me Ava had the most perfect energy and that she wanted to go to Pilates with her every day. Ava was the kind of woman who made quinoa look sexy and could quote environmental stats like they were Bible verses. After a few sessions, Hailey came home quoting Ava, "Did you know a plant-based diet reduces your carbon footprint by 73%? She said it like a threat while I was eating a steak. I laughed until I realized she wasn't joking. That night, she didn't touch me. She just sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through vegan Instagram reels, eyes glassy like she was under some kind of spell. The next morning, my phone was flooded with animal rights content. Hailey had snuck into my account while I slept, unfollowed my family, my friends, everyone. Replaced it all with PETA videos and spiritual vegan gurus talking about meat karma. I tried talking to her, gently at first. I told her I respected her choices but asked her to respect mine too. She just stared at me and muttered, "Ava was right about you." Within a week, my entire barbecue set was gone, sold online for $20. She threw out over $400 worth of premium cuts I'd been saving for our anniversary. Our living room, once filled with warm candles and cozy throw blankets, looked like a protest site. Posters of slaughterhouses. A statue of a weeping cow. Even our dog Max looked nervous. But I held on. I thought it was just a phase. That she'd come back. Then one night, I came home to a seared steak on the table. Still warm. Max's collar sat beside it like a twisted garnish. My heart stopped. I called for Max. Nothing. Then a text came from an unknown number. Enjoy smiling face with smiling eyes. My hand shook. I nearly dropped the phone. I called our friend Lily, who had always been suspicious of Ava. Her first words? "You're not crazy." She told me Ava ran a wellness group that was more than just green smoothies and kale. She finds people desperate to feel special. People like Hailey, she whispered. Then she breaks them. What do you mean, breaks them? I asked, pacing. She made me release my cat into the woods. Said ownership was exploitation. My stomach turned. The steak. The collar. Max. Was this Hailey's way of proving her loyalty? I spent the night searching every alley, park, and drainage ditch in a 10-mile radius. Nothing. Filed a police report. Officer Haynes barely looked up from his desk. Said dogs run away all the time. Said putting meat on a table wasn't a crime. My ex-wife joined a cult, I said. She thinks eating meat is murder. He tapped his pen and said, "Well, murder's not on the menu tonight." I walked out of that station knowing one thing. I was on my own. But I wasn't ready for what I'd find next in her apartment. It was the photo that broke me. Hailey's third-floor apartment looked harmless from the outside, clean lines, potted succulents on the balcony. But as I parked across the street and zoomed in with my phone, my breath caught in my throat. There, framed in the center of her balcony, was a photo of Max surrounded by a circle of white candles. Some kind of dried flowers. And something that looked like fur. I had to get inside. Thankfully, I knew her landlady, Mrs. Landon, an elderly woman who adored me for fixing her sink during a Thanksgiving dinner Hailey once forgot. She let me in after I lied about needing important tax papers Hailey forgot to mail. Her apartment smelled like cinnamon and mothballs. She gave me a cookie and told me Hailey was at another one of her protests. The moment I stepped into Hailey's apartment, it felt like stepping into someone else's life. The layout was the same as when we lived together, but the warmth was gone. It was colder, hostile. Every wall plastered with gory animal rights posters, bloodied factory farms, quotes like "silence is violence" and "flesh is death." The shrine on the dining table was real. Max's photo smiled out from a mound of dried petals and wax. The candles had melted into long stalactites of wax. dripping onto the table like frozen blood. A small wooden box sat beside it, open just slightly. Inside was something golden. Dog fur. Max's exact shade. I nearly collapsed. My knees buckled as I grabbed the edge of the table to stay upright. Beside the shrine was a notebook. Hailey's handwriting filled the pages, only now it was warped. Shaky. Pressed so hard into the paper it nearly tore. Day 7 of liberation. It began. The sacrifice was necessary to cleanse my soul. Ava says the hardest part is the first one, but I feel lighter already. Sacrifice. The word sent a bolt of ice down my spine. I took photos of everything, shaking hands, blurry shots, but I didn't care. I had to document this. Then, on the fridge, I spotted something even worse, a calendar. Friday circled in red. 2 words underneath, cleansing ritual. Bring the tools. Today was Wednesday. I ran out of that apartment like it was on fire. Back in my car, I called Lily. She's planning something, I said, voice trembling. Friday. A ritual. Cleansing. Lily was silent for a beat. Then, that's new. When I was with them, we just did confession circles. Told our animal sins, cried about burgers. What do I do now? I asked. You need more evidence, she said. And you need other people to back you up. Former members. Survivors. Ava's not just converting vegans anymore. She's creating zealots. That night, I stayed up until 3 a.m. tracking down people who had escaped Ava's group. Through blogs, forums, Facebook groups. I found 3. Mia, who ran a recovery blog. Camden, who had posted a viral Reddit warning about plant-based extremism. And Ellis, who wrote a 10-page Medium essay about reclaiming his identity after losing it to eco-religious trauma. Each had a story, and each one was worse than the last. Mia said Ava convinced her to give up her dog, told her pets were slavery, emotional blackmail from carnist society. She left him at a shelter and never forgave herself. Camden said Ava pressured him to break up with his partner because they owned leather boots. Ellis. He admitted he'd vandalized 4 butcher shops under Ava's guidance. Spray-painted windows. Smashed display cases. I thought we were saving the world, he wrote. But Ava just wanted control. We arranged to meet at a cafe across town. We huddled in a booth like we were planning a heist. Because we were. A heist to steal back the truth from whatever Ava had twisted. I'm sorry about your dog, Mia said softly. He's not confirmed dead, I replied. There's still hope. Camden leaned forward. She's escalating, he said. My friends still in the group told me they're calling for direct action now. Something's coming. Something big. We hatched a plan. Mia would fake interest in rejoining. Camden would monitor their socials. Ellis, he'd help set up surveillance on Ava's house. But even as we whispered our plans into half-empty coffee mugs, I had the nagging feeling we were already too late. Because when I got back to my house that night, my front door was open, and every photo of Max was gone. At first, I thought it was just the wind. The front door was slightly ajar, swaying inward like someone had forgotten to shut it completely. Maybe I had. Maybe I was too distracted. But when I stepped inside and saw the kitchen lights on, I knew something was wrong. It was too quiet. I called Max's name out of instinct, even though I knew he wouldn't come. My voice echoed, hollow, bouncing off the walls of a house that no longer felt like home. Then I saw it. A tiny glass vial on the kitchen table. Inside, a thick red liquid. A note sat beneath it, handwritten in sharp, angular script. Blood for blood. I stared at it, my breath catching in my throat. The vial gleamed under the ceiling light, ominously still. All the framed photos of Max, every one, had been removed from the walls. Their absence screamed louder than if they'd been defaced. I backed out of the kitchen, my legs moving before my brain could catch up. This wasn't a warning. This was a threat. I called the police. Officers Moreno and Yu arrived 20 minutes later, flashlights sweeping through the house, gloved hands carefully bagging the vial. Yu crouched beside it, her brow furrowed. This blood may not be human, she said, but it's definitely meant to scare you. Moreno was less convinced. Still no evidence your ex-wife did this, he muttered. This could be anyone. I was done playing nice. I showed them the calendar from Hailey's apartment, the photo of the shrine, the notebook. Officer, you looked disturbed, but Moreno shrugged. We'll file it, sir. But beliefs alone don't make someone a criminal. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat on the floor beside the empty wall where Max's portrait had hung. I thought about the time he followed me into the bathroom and refused to leave while I cried after my dad's funeral. Just sat there, resting his chin on my knee. No words. No noise. Just presence. And I remembered something I hadn't thought about in years. I was 11. My mom had just started dating this new guy, Brent. Big on Jesus, bigger on obedience. He came to dinner one night with a shaved head and a leather Bible, told me animals had no souls. I said Max, our old collie, had more soul than he did. Brent didn't like that. The next morning, Max was gone. Mom told me he ran away. Years later, I found out Brent gave him to a shelter. Said he corrected my priorities. It took me a decade to realize I never forgave her for that. Never forgave myself either. That's why when Hailey mentioned Max in that text, I shattered. Not again. Never again. The next day, Ellis called me, his voice crackling with urgency. They're planning something, he said. On Friday. At your house. They're calling it a cleansing of the corrupt. I checked the calendar again. That damn red circle. Friday. Tomorrow. They mentioned tools, Ellis added. Purification kits. Gloves. Protective clothing. Like they're expecting blood. I moved out that night. Paid cash for a grimy roadside motel 2 towns over. Bare bulbs. Buzzing neon. But safer than waiting around in my own home like bait. Then came the text. We know what you're doing. Stop, or you'll join your dog. No name. No number. Just words that landed like bricks. Outside the motel window, a car idled. Gray sedan. Same one I'd seen parked across my house 2 days ago. I turned off the lights and crouched by the bed, heart hammering like a war drum. I wanted to run. God, I wanted to disappear. But then I remembered Max's goofy grin. His head tilt. The way he'd fall asleep with his paw resting on my foot like he needed to know I was there. And I decided I wasn't running. Not this time. Friday night arrived like a countdown to war. I sat in my parked car with Ellis beside me. Mia and Camden were in another car 2 blocks away, all of us waiting outside my house like reluctant spies. My stomach twisted with a mix of adrenaline and dread. A part of me hoped they wouldn't come, that this had all been some grotesque misunderstanding. At 11:38 p.m., a white van pulled up. 5 figures stepped out, all in black. Masks. Gloves. One of them moved hesitantly, like her feet didn't want to cooperate with her purpose. Hailey. The other unmistakable figure was Ava, composed, radiant, and terrifying in her calm. She carried a black duffel bag, heavy enough to pull her shoulder down on one side. I counted shovels. A small canister of what I prayed wasn't gasoline. And something wrapped in cloth. They're here, I whispered into the phone. Camden was already dialing 911. Dispatch says patrols are nearby, he said. But they won't get there in time. I didn't wait. I sprinted. Ellis called after me, but the blood pounding in my ears drowned everything out. I charged up the walkway toward my house, my footsteps thudding like drums. My front door stood open again. Inside, flickering orange light danced across the walls. They were in my living room, forming a circle around a metal fire pit. Hailey held a page of paper, her voice trembling as she read some kind of chant. Ava stood at her side, feeding bits of something into the flames, dried leaves, maybe herbs, maybe worse. I didn't care. Stop. I roared. They turned like ghosts. 5 masked faces staring at me in shock, except for Ava, who didn't flinch. Her eyes narrowed like I'd just ruined her surprise party. Hailey dropped the paper. You weren't supposed to be here. What are you doing in my house? I shouted, stepping forward. What is this? It's your reckoning, Ava said smoothly. A purification of violent energy. You brought death into this home. We're reclaiming it. I looked down at the fire. Something sizzled in the flames, a hunk of meat. And beside it, a dog collar. Not Max's, but close enough to twist my gut into knots. You're insane, I said, turning to Hailey. Is this what you become? She didn't answer. Her eyes darted to Ava like a student unsure whether she had permission to speak. And that's when I said it. Ask her about Jason. The room shifted. Confusion flashed across 3 of their faces. Ava's jaw tightened. Ask her about her boyfriend, I said, louder now. The one who eats ribs. The one she's been barbecuing with every other weekend. The one she wears leather for. Ava's mask cracked. She's lying to you, I said, pointing at Ava. She's living a double life. Check her Instagram if you don't believe me. The young man on Ava's left pulled out his phone. The silence was sharp enough to cut skin. Is this true? He asked her. She's manipulating you. Ava barked, grabbing his arm. He's a parasite. He just wants to derail your purpose. But her voice was off. Less commanding. more desperate. Hailey stepped back from the circle. He showed me, she said quietly. He sent me the pictures. You lied. Ava reached for her, fast, but I was faster. I stepped between them, my voice like steel. Don't touch her. And then, sirens. Blue and red lights poured through the windows like divine judgment. Ava's spell broke. She shoved past me and ran for the back door, her followers scrambling behind her. Only Hailey remained, frozen, staring at the flames. It was all a lie, she whispered. The police burst in seconds later, extinguishing the fire, bagging the items as evidence. Officer, you nodded grimly as I showed her everything. The photos, the meat, the collar, the duffel bag. Is this your dog's? She asked. No, I said. But it could have been. Hailey sat beside me on the front steps, hands shaking, mascara streaked with tears. I couldn't do it, she whispered. That night. With Max. I almost did, but I couldn't. Where is he? I asked, gripping her shoulder. With my sister. In Portland. Safe. The word echoed in my chest like a heartbeat. Safe. I didn't wait. By sunrise, I was already on the highway, northbound, every mile a needle stitching together the ragged edge of hope I'd been gripping since Hailey's confession. 6 hours to Portland. 6 hours to either reclaim my heart or have it crushed for good. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. Just followed the address she gave me, a suburban 2-story with flower boxes on the windows and a crooked basketball hoop over the garage. I knocked. A woman answered, surprised, guarded. Can I help you? I'm looking for Max, I said, voice trembling. Recognition dawned on her face. She stepped aside without a word. And there he was. My dog. His golden fur. His lopsided grin. That tail, an absolute blur of joy. He bolted toward me, skidding across the hardwood floor like he didn't care about traction or physics or the past 8 months. I dropped to my knees just in time to catch him. He whined. I cried. We held each other in a mess of fur and tears and snot. Sasha, Hailey's sister, stood by silently, her face soft with understanding. He's been waiting, she said. Every night he'd sleep by the door. Like he knew you'd come. I stayed in Portland that weekend. Max wouldn't let me out of his sight, not even in the bathroom. And I didn't care. I slept on the floor with him, fed him his favorite treats, scratched the spots behind his ears that made his back leg do that frantic thump. That Sunday, Sasha handed me a thumb drive. She asked me to give this to you. Only if you came in person. It was full of journal entries, videos, audio recordings. Hailey had been documenting everything. Her descent into the cult, her slow realization, the fear, the regret, and finally, her plan to protect Max from what Ava wanted her to do. One entry hit me so hard I had to pause it halfway through. I wanted to be good. I thought that meant purity. But all Ava did was isolate me, until the only way to prove my loyalty was to hurt the thing I loved the most. And I almost did. I almost became someone I would never forgive. That's when I forgave her. Not because she deserved it, but because Max was alive. Because I knew what it felt like to be swallowed by someone else's vision of purity. I took Max home. We spent a week laying low while Officer You built the case. Between Hailey's recordings, the fire ritual, Ava's break-in, and the testimonies from Mia, Camden, and Ellis, it was enough. They arrested Ava 2 weeks later at a vegan festival in Santa Rosa. She was signing books about ethical transformation under her alias, Nora Wild. The irony didn't escape me. She fought it all, claimed persecution, claimed the meat had been a prop, claimed she was the one being stalked. But the mask had cracked for good. She was sentenced to a year of probation, barred from organizing any group larger than 5 people. Fined heavily. Community service at a rescue shelter. Hailey moved in with Sasha permanently. Got a job as a vet assistant. She sent me a photo once. Max's face on her phone screen as her lock screen. Just in case I forget what matters, she wrote. We started talking again. Slowly. Carefully. One day, she asked if Max could visit her. I brought him. Watched as he laid his head in her lap. As if forgiving her came easier than it did for me. And that was when I understood. Forgiveness isn't an event. It's a process. Months passed. I met someone at the dog park. Natalie. A teacher who always had treats in her pocket and didn't care if you ate steak or tofu. Max adored her. We took things slow. No grand declarations. One night, Hailey called. Her voice was clear. Strong. I'm happy, she said. Really. And I want you to know, if you ever need someone to talk to who understands. I do, I said. And I'm glad you're okay. As I hung up, Max curled up beside me on the couch. Safe. Home. I kissed his forehead and whispered, "We made it, buddy. Not everyone gets a second chance. But some of us. We fight for it. And we never let go."